Welcome to Status Check with Spivey, where we talk about life, law school admissions, a little bit of everything. Today, we're going to talk about how to write yourself, and we're joined by the perfect person to do so, Mishka Shubaly, who received the Dean's Fellowship from Columbia University with a Master's in Fine Arts and Writing. He has 6 Kindle singles on Amazon. They've all been bestsellers. He's a New York Times bestseller, and these are memoirs. They're books about himself. So we dive deep into how to write about yourself. He takes us through how he teaches students when he teaches at the Yale's Writers Conference every year. And we talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. He feels it. You're going to probably feel it in law school, and mostly about some tricks of the trade to writing. So without further delay, let me hand it over to Mishka and me. I am honored to have with me Mishka Shubaly. This is the first podcast we've done with a celebrity. Mishka, I think of you as a celebrity.
You take that back.
I take it back, but I still can't get your bio in my head right. We were just chit-chatting what you do with your students at Yale. Why don't you just take us through that exercise, but with you, obviously not me.
I mean, a bio is always weird because, like, what's it for? And you have to curate who you are as a person to present to your audience the person they want to see or the person it's appropriate for them to see. There are many things in my life that I will leave out of my bio. But some of the important details from an official bio would be that I was a drunk for a long time. I've been sober for nearly 13 years now. I published a string of 7 best-selling Kindle singles through Amazon. I got sober without AA or rehab and became a long-distance runner. And finally hit the New York Times bestseller list last year with Cold Turkey, an Audible original about how to quit drinking without rehab or 12-step programs. And I have a new book out collecting all of my Kindle singles in a physical form for the first time.
There's 2 reasons why we're so lucky to have you on here. One is you write beautifully about yourself, and our typical listener is having to write about themselves for the first time in their lives. I mean, if you think about it, when you're going through school, they're always having you write about other people, not yourself. So it's a struggle. And we want to tap your brain about how to do that.
Back to the sort of idea of a bio and what's included and what's left out. One of the things that I do with my students in my workshop is I have them introduce themselves and then reintroduce themselves and reintroduce themselves and reintroduce themselves, because usually when we introduce ourselves in a group setting, hi, my name's Janice, I'm 49, I'm a software engineer, and I'm from Houston. That's not a person. In no way does that encompass this woman's character, her life experiences. Maybe she was going to school for political science and then got off track. Maybe she was a drug addict. Maybe she was a sex worker. Maybe she has an incredibly seamy past, but that's all left out in those details. So one of the things that I have my students do is to give that sort of cut and dry bio. And then I ask them to introduce themselves to speak about themselves in third person, because if you and I are sitting in a cafe and having coffee, I probably know my face better than any face out there. I don't know if I have spinach in my teeth or if I have a booger hanging out of my nose, but you do. You can see my face. I can't. So othering yourself in writing like that and looking at yourself as a different character often reveals bigger truths, or truths that we hide from ourselves when we're talking about ourselves in the first person. An example, we'll say Mishka was running one day in December along the canals in Phoenix, a route that he prefers over the sort of majestic mountains because of all the homeless people living near the canal. On his run, he sees an older man standing next to the canal on his phone, sort of frantic. On the steep embankment of the canal, he sees a scrawny little chihuahua shivering that has gone in the water or fallen in the water, but is now unable to climb the steep embankment. Mishka, he's towards the end of his run, so he goes in the water up to his thighs. It's freezing cold. At this point, the old man says, "Bro, he tried to bite the last person who tried to get him out of there, but this guy," so I don't have to keep saying my name, this guy goes over to the dog and he's like, "Well, fuck it. I'm into it already." Takes his shirt off, throws the shirt over the dog, and then tries to grab it right behind its head so it can't bite him. And he almost gets it right. And the dog reaches around him and latches on hard to his thumb. But he says, "Well, if I let go now, then everything's lost and I've gotten wet for no reason." So he carries the dog out, with his thumb bleeding, gets the dog to the edge of the water, takes the shirt off, and the dog immediately runs away. In that story, I have been every character there. I have been the person on the edge of the canal, standing helplessly by, watching a terrible situation unfold, but not having the courage or the wherewithal to deal with it. I've been the person trying to help and getting hurt. And I've been the dog. I've been scared and shivering and wet and cold and had somebody try to help me. And then I'm like, hey, thanks for nothing, and run off.
I have a similar story. So I'm a chronic runner, and I did that 48-hour running challenge, the David Goggins thing, and just fractured my talus 8 months ago. It's still not healed, Mishka.
Yeah.
But I remember once I was running in the mountains. I'm in Colorado. I ran between a mother bear on one side of the trail, deep in the woods, and the cub shimmied up the tree on the other side. And more than I am, I stopped and started videoing it, which is really me stopping to watch the mother bear charge at me. Yeah, it's on my Instagram page. People are going to go,
God.
But I've been the mother bear. I've been protective, and I've been the cub. I mean, who hasn't? Who hasn't been protective of someone they love? Who hasn't been freaked out by this life we live in? So I can relate. What you just said right there, I mean, even that introduction, so much better than the Wikipedia. Mishka's done this. Mishka's done that. So much better. If I can put you on the spot, what's the best answer you've ever heard to that? What's the best student answer you've ever heard when you said, tell me about yourself?
What really jumps out to me is the gulf between, I'm Janice, I'm 49, I'm a software engineer. The gulf between that, then when this woman speaks about herself in third person, is a radical transformation. You know, I have a week or 10 days with my students. And in my workshop, we try to deal with everything, the big questions: love, death, sex, humanity's role in the universe, is hope hopeless, the big stuff, the scary stuff. We could just live in that netherworld of prim and proper formality the entire workshop and nobody would get anything out of it. What I tell people immediately is I tell them that I was that idiot drunk for a long time and that writing and running are what really saved me. And I tell them, look around the table, look in the eyes of each person sitting here. And they don't do it. And then I say, no, really do it. Look in the eyes of the other people here. Everybody sitting at this table has pissed the bed. Everybody sitting here has shit their pants. Every single one of us carries a horrible secret, or dozens of them. That's what makes us human. That's not our weakness. That is what we're here to share. As a memoir writer, your job is to protect the secrets of others and to expose your own secrets. We're in the business of telling secrets. So I'm always like, get real comfortable with each other because we're going to talk about some dark shit. To just barrel through that veil of respectability and just be like, we're going to get into the dirty stuff. The stuff that defines us as human beings, the obstacles we've had to overcome. I'm always so rewarded by how people respond to that.
So very similar to what we do. We try to get our audience to talk about, we call them Wex, moments where everything changed.
That's great.
Right. And you have them. I know you have them. And my biggest successes all come from my biggest failures. My upcoming book is called Why We Suffer. If it was 75 and sunny every day, you wouldn't know how beautiful it was.
That cuts to the heart of my anxiety right now because it's like 75 and beautiful right now. And I'm in Phoenix. So in 10 days, it's going to be like 100. And then it's going to get worse. It'll be 115 degrees for 2 weeks.
Yeah. What are you doing in Arizona? I thought of you in Atlanta for some reason.
I was in New York for most of my life, 18 years. I was in Atlanta for a couple of years. And then that relationship ended. I went on tour for 5 months until I was just batshit crazy. Phoenix is sort of where the wagon broke down. And now I live here.
I'm actually speaking at a conference for high school student well-being out there. So I'll go for a run with you if my foot ever heals, Mishka.
Yeah. Hit me up.
We'll do it hard. The disconnect between what the people we coach, what they want to write about. These are people applying to college, applying to law school, applying to Columbia's Master's in Fine Arts program. And they're thinking about, okay, how do I impress this unknown stranger? And they think of them like in a suit with a coffee platter. And they want to use words like bumptious and bloviating and overwrought. Well, that person has just read 60 pages of that. And what they really want to do is not talk about that resume. Don't talk about your resume. Talk about those moments when everything changed. And this is a good way to dive into your life. Might be dark, but when you were 15, a friend of yours implicated someone you knew in a double homicide. Is that right?
Yeah, I left home when I was 15 and I started a college level program at Simon's Rock. And while I was there, one of my classmates, dude who was on the basketball team with me, got an assault rifle and shot up our school. He shot 6 people and he killed 2 of them, one of whom was a teacher and one of whom was a friend of ours. And then I testified in his murder trial.
That would, to me, classify as a moment when things changed.
It's tricky because I was 15 and like my friends and I were all hard asses. So we immediately saw other students crying and obviously like traumatized and distressed. And we were like, whatever, fuck it. It sucks. Let's just never talk about it ever again.
You armored up. So 2 pages. You get to write about any of these, Rich will call them misadventures. But what would pop? What would be eye-popping?
I don't know, man. I am at a place right now as a writer where I do feel kind of blocked, where I'm not sure what the next story is. But also that's how everything has happened for me, where every time I finish a song, I'm like, well, that's the last song I'll ever write until the next one finds you. I think if I had to tell a story that I haven't yet told in writing, it would have to be an afterword to my memoir, I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, where I spoke at length about my father abandoning us when I was 15. And my mother had found a love letter he'd written to his secretary. And I latched onto that as this is proof that my father is a bad, weak man. He's a coward and he's lied to us. 20 years later, I tried to repair my relationship with my father. We talked about it and he sort of led me or gave me ambiguous answers, sort of encouraged me to lead myself to believe that that was a letter that his therapist had assigned to him to write to my mother in order to fall back in love with her. So in the grounds of that and some other things, I fought really hard to forgive my father and to repair my relationship with him. And then wrote a book about it, published the book. And just before the book came out, my mom found the letter in her storage unit and it was addressed to his fucking secretary and it was in his handwriting and it was signed his name at the bottom. He lied to me when I was a kid and then he lied to me when I was 35. So I sort of forgave him on the wrong grounds or for bad reasons. And I really struggled with that. I was furious and it felt totally phony. And at this point, I feel we forgive other people not for them, but for us, to stop them from living rent free in our heads, to end that obsession with them. I sought revenge against my father for a long time, and nobody should ever try to take revenge on another person because it takes a much bigger toll out of your own life than your target.
You've read The Count of Monte Cristo. That's a classic.
It's funny. That's my girlfriend's favorite book. We were bickering about it the other night.
Does she like the movie? I'm curious if she likes.
She wants me to go back and reread the book again because I saw the movie when I was very young and haven't had any experience with that story either way since I was a child. So maybe it's time to refresh myself. But I was able to forgive my father. And in doing that, I set myself free. So I have to preserve that forgiveness, keep him forgiven, even though it was for bad reasons on bad data. I just don't talk to him anymore. And that's a working forgiveness. I know that I did everything and anything I could to repair my relationship with him and that he didn't. I'm satisfied now that I've exhausted every channel I could to repair that relationship. And when you're gambling at the casino and you keep almost winning, but not winning, and then every once in a while you win, the smart thing to do is to be like, fuck this, get up and walk away from that machine because it will take everything from you. We sort of live in a world where it's all about mending relationships. Don't burn any bridges. Another great saying is mend fences. Well, you know what you're doing when you mend fences? You're putting up boundaries.
I'm about to say, you're building the fence even better.
Yeah. So my relationship with my father right now is the best it's ever been. I don't fucking deal with him. And I'm fine with that.
I've read about 60,000 what's called personal statements in my life. I've read that story, Mishka, 12 to 20 times. Someone coming back on a train who visited her father's tombstone and was overcome by emotion and introspected on that train back to New York City, where he used to live, about how forgiving her father released her into the world. She didn't want to live with that anymore. She wasn't doing it for him. She was doing it for her.
Yeah.
I've read the personal statements about, this is 20 years ago and I still remember it. It's 7:30 in the morning. The guy's in the shower. He's smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer, 7:30 in the morning. And he puts the beer down, pours it out, puts the cigarette out, and he goes for like a 1/4 mile run before work. And he can only make it a 1/4 mile. He's never done that before. It made sense. He had like a 2.0 GPA, and I admitted him. I admitted him to law school. Maybe he's lying, but the story was read so sincere. And where our listeners go wrong is they think they need to impress. What they need to do, you talk about this, and it's 100% apropos for our listeners. Write for yourself, write your own journal, write your own story. And that's what's going to stand out from 60,000 pages of this other bloviating stuff about how I interned on the Hill.
Thank you. Here's another great example to back up what you just said. When I was going to grad school, I applied for the internship at the New Yorker, which is one of the fanciest internships you could get at the time. I was super anxious about my resume because I didn't have the resume that other students did. And it was the day after Halloween. So I went into the interview super hungover and just raging imposter syndrome. It felt like I don't belong here at all. And we sat there around the table and they were like, so we're looking at your resume and we see that you worked as a line cook at the International House of Pancakes. Tell us about that. And I was like, are you shitting me? And they were like, no, we can't tell you how many candidates have come here who have done undergrad at Brown or Yale or Stanford or all these top-notch schools, but you're the only person who's applied who has your IHOP degree, right?
Yeah.
Your IHOP. You know, I was like, I worked 5 to 5, worked a 12-hour shift on Friday nights, and I worked a couple nights during the week. I started doing that 12-hour shift because I got my girlfriend pregnant and I had to pay for an abortion. And I got the job. I got the internship. They fucking loved me. And it's because I was being honest. I was not speaking to their suits or their offices or their degrees. I was speaking to them as people. You know, I said, have you guys ever worked a 12-hour shift in bad footwear? Everything hurts. It was one of those things where I was like, well, I fucking obviously blown this, so I might as well just be honest. And I think that's a really helpful way to go through life is just, fuck it, I might as well be honest. I have nothing to lose.
You know, people gravitate to sincerity. If I were in your writing class, and I probably need to take it before I write another page in my book, if I was talking about myself in the third person, that Mike Spivey worked in housekeeping at a hotel when he was a college student at Vanderbilt. And it was in Nashville, Tennessee. So he would walk up to the doors and knock on and say housekeeping. And it would be 8 in the morning and these drunk country music stars would invite him in and be like, look, as long as you don't say our name, kid, here's a shot of whiskey. This is 8 in the morning, Mishka. I wasn't making my 9 a.m. class, noon class, because I was partying with these country music stars. If I did that well, and I'm not fleshing it out here as well as you do your stories, that would make an incredible 2-page story. Eldon Campbell, a 6'11" professional NBA basketball player, opened the door buck naked. And here I am, 18 years old, you know, my little housekeeping outfit. I didn't know what to do. Those are the sincere stories. My time waiting tables, the kids that were screaming and their parents were screaming.
You're absolutely giving us enough there to describe the disparity between your life and your experience in that moment, and then the gulf between your life in that moment and then the lives of these musicians and athletes, you know, where they were in their lives. The housekeeping also sees all kinds of seamy shit. You kill yourself in a hotel, who finds your body? Housekeeping.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some stuff I can't unsee, but they loved it. The country music stars loved it. First, they thought of me as a housekeeper, and they're like, this is cool. And then I would get to know them, and they're like, oh, you're a college student. We haven't tried that yet. What's it like? And I'm like, you know, it kind of sucks. They're like, well, that's cool. Those were the things that would pop. I literally just read on my iPhone on my flight back from DC to Colorado, your book, The Long Run.
It's funny. That was the one that I thought was going to torpedo my fledgling writing career. That was the biggest story I've ever written.
So much stuff was out there. You were in a relationship and you said a line, 2 lines. I actually copied them about sometimes that's life. You do the right thing. The other person does the right thing and it still doesn't work out. I was like, man, tell me about this person who hasn't been in that situation.
What I was writing there was a version of Harry Carey quote. I think he was talking about the Cubs. He said, you can fight with great courage, do everything right, and lose anyway.
I'm going to tell you how much of a nerd I am. Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek Next Generation said the same thing to Data.
It's such a great quote, you know, and it shows that ultimately we're not powerless, but we're never totally in control. It's funny. I was just thinking about that girl the other day because I went for a run and I pulled on this North Face shirt that I have. I think it's North Face that she bought for me in 2010, 2011, like when I started running, and I still have it. every time I put it on, I think of her and I think she really supported me at a crucial time with some crucial stuff, not just running, but also like I was buying and selling guitars. And every girlfriend I'd ever had was like, oh God, like what a liability. And she was an accountant. And she was like, what's your return on these? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, you should do this. You can make money this way. She was awesome. But she was an accountant and I'm me. Same planet, different worlds.
You wake up and you're in Phoenix. So you went to Columbia for a master's in fine arts and fiction writing. Do you remember what you wrote about in your application there?
I think I turned in a piece of writing that actually I ended up mining for my memoir 10 or 15 years later. I was just writing about my life and like being a drunk and being a loser and the shit that we were supposed to do that we didn't and the shit that we did instead of doing the good stuff or the right stuff or making the smart choices. I do remember too that I wrote an essay about Purple America, a book by Rick Moody, who seems to be a writer who has fallen out of the canon for whatever reason. I still remember that book and I still remember sort of like how stunning the opening was. It starts with a young man who's taking care of his mother who has Parkinson's or something similar. He's washing her in the bath. And at the end of the bath, he washes her vagina because that's what a woman does when she washes her body. But it's a son washing his mother's body. And that's literally where he came from. That is the portal from non-being into being. It's such a bizarre moment, so intimate. And that's like everything that I want to do in writing. A moment like that where we shy away. Let's hit pause. What does this moment actually mean? Let's sit with the discomfort that we feel here in this moment. A friend of mine is now having to change his father's diapers. This is the person who taught him how to be a man, his protector, his provider, all these things. And then now he's this very capable man is sort of reduced to being an infant again. Those are the moments that I think really come to life in fiction and memoir, in writing in general. Moments that are at once totally banal and totally cosmic. Washing yourself and going to the bathroom are things that are so mundane that they're left out of virtually every book. But those are two instances where it's overflowing with meaning.
Especially if you're smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer when you're doing it.
I love that because that is such a genuine moment. And why did he have an epiphany? We don't know. He doesn't know, but he did. And it was real.
Let me just double click for our listeners. Every tale you have told, whether it's yours or you're just talking about friends, and if they were to write those stories, every one of those essays would be music to that poor dean of admissions or admissions officer's ears. Because again, what people don't realize is they're at home and the TV's on in the background and the kids are screaming, a dog's barking when I'm reading these, whatever. And I need something to wake me up. And it's not going to be about your intern on the Hill. It's not going to be about the day you won the county fair, they paraded you around the market square. If I read one more, I played sports, you do sports. If I read one more essay about scoring the winning touchdown, it's these moments where everything changed. Everything you talked about would be a home run. Well, particularly because you write so well, but even the topic would be a home run. The more I read beautiful writing like yours or Leslie Jaminson's, the more I read outstanding writing, Catcher in the Rye, I've probably read 15, 20 times. I carry it when I travel. The better writer I become.
Absolutely. There's no shortcuts there. Every good writer has read a fucking shitload, from romance novels and horror novels and comic books to Shakespeare, Chaucer, Finnegan's Wake, Proust. You need to be able to consume everything and figure out what serves you and what doesn't, what's food and what's shit. The writers who speak to you and whose work informs your own work. Thomas Pynchon is a beloved writer. I have no use for him. I know his work has merit. I know people love it. You're welcome to it. It doesn't speak to me. It's about learning about yourself, and it's overcoming your own insecurities. I always think about walking into Guitar Center and there's always a guy who's like sitting at the pedal board with a pointy guitar and he has every effect turned on and he's like playing like all these Mixolydian scales and all this shit. And it's bullshit. He's insecure. So he's going to play the flashiest, most processed thing he can think of. But Neil Young grabs a guitar and plays one note, and it's not even the right note. He plays the wrong note and then he milks it. And you're like, that's fucking Neil Young. I can tell right away. Fred Eaglesmith, a songwriter who I love, he has a song that's G, D, and C. That's it, the whole song. It never changes, but he doesn't need a fourth chord. He will build you a universe out of a 1-4-5 progression, out of 3 chords. And you're like, oh man, that's it. That's amazing. That's everything I need. Read as much as you can, write as much as you can, and then have confidence in yourself. You don't say, I clutched my 4 fingers and thumb into a mighty anvil of Thor and I smote my. No, you say, I hit him as hard as I could. Your words should be building blocks, like pieces of Lego. One of my students one year, fantastic writer, she was talking about a boyfriend's father. And she said he was the kind of man who threw golf clubs. That's perfect writing right there. 1-syllable words. He was the kind of man who threw golf clubs. We know instantly who this guy is, regardless of what size he is. Inside, he's the small man. He watches weird, gross porn. That he owns golf clubs shows that he has a lot of material wealth or position or status in his life, but he can take no joy in it.
Spaceship hovered like a brick wouldn't. That was from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's all monosyllabic.
But also, I remember with great delight some of the worst writing I've ever read in my life. I was working as an editor for this agent, or was like reading submissions and stuff. And this guy had written this 500-page epic memoir, and he's writing about his first sexual experience. The woman straddled him, and he says, I was rubbing on her bottom like it was a magic lamp, and I wanted a genie to come out and grant me 3 wishes. Beautifully bad. That will stay with me longer than any piece of good writing I've ever read, because he's hoping that a genie is going to come out of her butt. It's wild. It's preposterous. And I love this guy's enthusiasm. There's something so naive and childlike about it. And good fucking God, man, go work in a hardware store or something. Never write again.
Do you still suffer from imposter syndrome when you're right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I got your invite to be on the podcast, I was like, I'm not a writer. Maybe I was at one point, but I'm not anymore. Or it was a hoax. It was a trick. It was an error in the algorithm. I just did a podcast this morning with Josh Mallerman, best-selling horror writer, been a friend for almost 20 years now. And we were talking about when we were touring together and starving and like eating a slice of pizza out of the trash. And he and I are both so fucking lucky. We have amazing lives. And we wake up every morning and we've forgotten it completely. You don't leap out of bed with a cape on because you did a good thing or you did a series of good things. You wake up and you're like, oh my fucking God, why does my right leg hurt so much? Why does my hip hurt? Are my bones rotting? I'm only 45. You wake up in that creature suffering. And I'm grateful for that.
A good note to end on. This is why Rich Roll keeps having you on. You're just easy to talk to. But I know you got to go help your mom's neighbors fix your bathtub. Thank you for sharing your tips with our listeners. Stay chill in Phoenix, man. It's about to get warm. Thanks for being with us, Mishka.
Absolutely. Have a good one.